And then the main event, man. The main event, Vasyl Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez. And yes, I predicted that Lomachenko was going to win the decision. And a lot of people predicted that. I said he would win a decision or a late stoppage. And, you know, that's not what happened. Lopez showed up. He really brought it. He showed a really high boxing IQ, and there was a couple of things I noticed early in the fight, you know, that he did surprise me with. The first thing that he started doing in the first round was when Loma would try to get that angle, he would be able to pivot around it and match the movement. So right off rip, you know, the move that Loma does to set up so much of his offense, Lopez is kind of negating it, you know, and he wasn't really falling for the feints. He didn't fall for the feints the way a lot of people do. I looked at it almost like when you're playing one-on-one basketball with somebody and somebody has really nice handles, you see a lot of people when they defend them, they get a little caught looking at all the moves they're doing, and that's how you cross them up and get to the basket. A good defender kind of just stays in front and doesn't look at every individual move and is kind of looking at your center, not reacting to everything. I looked at it like that. All of the shit that Lomachenko was trying to do with the glove high, drop low, the feint, the dip to the side, he wasn't reacting to it the way other guys do. And that's because he has a very high boxing IQ and he has really great reflexes. You know, the jab helped with that. He kept the jab out there very snappy. It wasn't landing it a lot, but it established a certain amount of range. Like, you know, you're going to have to go through some fire to get past this point. And I think particularly, you know, in the first half, it stalled Lomachenko's offense. But the scorecards in this fight were fucking terrible. In particular, Julia Letterman having it 119-109. She wasn't watching the fight. She wasn't watching the fight. There's no way she was watching the fight. And I've read since then, the Lomachenko's management said we would prefer to not have her because she's from New York. Lopez is from New York. She has had some very bad scorecards in the past. I'm not necessarily gonna say she's exclusively a bad judge, but she doesn't have the best track record. And the commission was like, you know what? Just them being from the same state's not a good enough reason. You have to have a better reason, because you know we have no interest, you know, vested interest in who wins whatsoever. And it's just like, all right, but where does she get 11-1? Where is that coming from? You know, I don't know. I don't think that's within the realm of reality at all. And so how do you not, you know, call her into questions? Be like, what? There has to be some kind of review for people who have these kind of scorecards like this. You know, what was she seeing? Did she just have an off night? Was she not really paying attention? Does she know the Lopez's? You know, what is, you know, and you hate to think that way, but if it's just that you had an off night, look, these are the biggest fights in the world. This is a unification fight. It's very rare that we get these, and so you'd like to see the cleanest officiating possible. And 11 rounds to 1 in this fight is not reality, straight up. But beyond that, if you're looking at just the fight, the truth is there was two different fights. There was the first half of the fight, and there was the second half of the fight. You know, the first half of the fight had a lot to do with Lomachenko's inactivity. And Lopez got his jab working. He was throwing that right hand to the body beautifully. He was throwing combinations to the body, following it, you know, upstairs. A lot of the punches that he tried to hit Loma in the face with were not landing. It was very hard for him to land clean headshots, but there was just so little offense coming from Lomachenko through, you know, the first 6 rounds. He really just kept his hands in his pocket. And I got a sense of what he was doing, but it was a little like, man, I don't know how you put yourself in that kind of hole against somebody this good. This guy's too good for that. You know, maybe at a lower level you can kind of coast through a portion of the fight and pull it out at the end, but this kid's too fucking good for that, man. This is a top level fighter. So it seemed strange to me. But then in the 7th round, Lomachenko started letting his hands go a little bit, and by the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, it was like it was a little bit of an avalanche. It was like the pressure picked up every round, and by the 11th round, he was really going at Lopez, and he was landing hard left hands. He was landing some hard body shots. He had some good combinations working, and you could see the pressure kind of getting to Lopez a little bit. His eyes were getting puffy. And in the 11th, Lomachenko started getting that angle, and he started, you could see Lopez's fatigue. He was starting to fall for the feints a little bit. He wasn't quite as switched on. And there was a part of me that thought, all right, well, if you're looking at this 12th round, this is a very close fight right now. If Lomachenko's won the last 5 rounds, potentially. And so that's the tale of 2 fights. And the 12th round really sealed the deal in a sense, because Lopez was much more active. He was much more active. He was much more aggressive than Lomachenko. He was landing more combinations. When Lomachenko let his hands go, he was able to land cleanly. But for the most part, it was Lopez being more active. And the 12th was really, honestly, where Lopez landed his best shots upstairs, because Lomachenko was coming forward and being aggressive, I think sensing that he was either behind or that it was very close. There's no way Lomachenko thought that he was well ahead. I can't imagine that. He's smart enough to know, that if he's just getting going in the 7th round, that there's a whole half of the fight that has potentially not gone his way. And I thought that it was a good fight. But there was things about it that were just inconclusive for me, that were unanswered questions, and it was a good fight that left me wanting so much more. Because when Lomachenko put his foot on the gas, he was very, very effective, and he landed a lot of clean, hard shots. So there was really essentially 5 takeaways that I had from this fight. The first one being that Teofimo Lopez's boxing IQ is very high. And he showed that the whole fucking fight, man. He did not fall for the feints. He stayed with the pivots off the angle. The straight right hand to the body was very accurate, and I think it made Lomachenko aware of how heavy his hands are and how quick he can get his hands off. And it helped him establish distance. And then, to be honest with you, his defensive reflexes are tremendous. I mean, there were times where Lomachenko let his hands go that he just straight up missed because of Lopez's defense, because of Lopez's reflexes, his ability to move his upper body, to pivot with Lomachenko. There's not a lot of people that can match that IQ and athleticism, and I think he did a really great job of it for most of the fight, even in the sections of the fight that were a struggle for him. The second one is that, honestly, Lomachenko's inactivity lost him the fight. There's a lot of great things that Lopez did, and he's a better fighter than I gave him credit for, than a lot of people gave him credit for. But Lomachenko's inactivity was the main thing here. I mean, he got started in round 6. He got going in round 7, and round 8 he was rolling. That whole process needed to start 2 rounds earlier, right? The 4th or 5th round, okay, you've had 3 to 4 rounds to get a look. The kid's powerful. He's fast. He's smart. But the 5th round, not the 7th round, was where the heat needed to pick up in a serious way. And it didn't. And we found out since that he's had shoulder surgery, that he has had issues with his labrum. I think his surgeon said that he had like a bruised rotator cuff or a bone bruise on his shoulder, and I believe it's on his jabbing hand, his right hand. If that's not correct, leave a comment and let me know. But, and I've heard people say, I don't see how it affected the fight, but I think the way it affected the fight is he didn't let his hands go for 6 rounds. The 6th, he started touching him with the jab a little bit, but it would be hard to say that he won the 6th round. I mean, it would be very hard to say that. But that was where he got started. And I'm saying, had he started, as opposed to getting going in the 7th, if he had gotten going in the 5th, I think that he would have won the fight. And I think maybe even gotten a stoppage. And it's hard to know how much of that is Lomachenko and just a lacking in the performance from Lomachenko, or how much of it has to do with Lopez. If it is the speed and the power and the consequences of, if I do this feint and then I let my hands go, but he's got the timing on the feint, I'm going to get caught. But that's the risk you take at this level, ultimately. And Lomachenko's defense and his skills and everything were great. But he just wasn't fucking accurate. Or he wasn't active. And that's what lost him the fight, ultimately. The third takeaway for me is that Lopez is 100% an elite fighter, without a doubt. I mean, he's arguably the best lightweight in the world. I mean, this is the best win that anybody at lightweight has, by far. So you'd have to have him the number one at lightweight. You got to have him in your top 10 pound for pound. There's no way you don't. ESPN saying Lomachenko's number one. I had him number 2 behind Canelo. So, Lopez is absolutely a top-level elite fighter. 100%. Any question about that now is dead. It's erased. I had my own questions about it. Are his feet more of an Andre Berto? Or can he move for real? Can he use that IQ to match with Loma? And he did. There's no doubt about it. 100% he did. The other takeaway that I had from this fight was not just that the scorecards were bad, but if you're looking at it from a truly objective point of view, this fight comes down to how you feel about round 2 and round 7. And maybe 12. But mostly how you feel about 2 and 7. And the reason I say that is that I think Max Kellerman talked a little bit about this in a similar way. But to me, there's clear rounds in this fight, right? Lopez, to me, clearly won 1, 3 through 6, and 12. Clearly. Loma clearly won 8 through 11, right? So there's no doubt, I think, in everybody's mind, if you're watching this fight for real, that there's 6 rounds that are clearly Lopez's rounds. Clearly. And there's 4 rounds that are clearly for Lomachenko. So there's a range of realistic scores, right? Andre Ward, during the telecast, had it 114 to 114. I'm not going to lie, that's how I scored it. But the range of realistic scores is 8-4 Lopez to 6-6. 7-5 Lomachenko would be pushing it. If you had the 12th for Loma, I don't see how you could be. He did land some good, hard, clean shots, but the activity level was just different. And so the range of realistic scores on this fight is 8-4 to 6-6. And anything really outside of that, you're not watching the fight. So to me, there was one good scorecard that the judges turned in, and the other 2, to me, had no representation on the fight. Which leads to my last point, that I think a rematch is necessary. I've seen interviews with Lopez already where it looks like he's not particularly interested in that. But I don't know how you don't want to do this again. Maybe the money's not worth it or whatever, but in this coronavirus era, why would you not want to run it back? Especially if you feel like you dominated. That should be even more reason to want to run it back, right? You got the 2 best lightweights in the world here. If Loma's healthy come next winter, I read maybe January, February, he can start training again. Why would you not want to run this fight back? It was a close fight. Maybe they don't see it as a close fight, which to me would be advantageous to Lomachenko in a rematch. Because if Lopez thinks that he blew this fight out or he dominated this fight, which he did not, then he's not taking notes on what can I do better? How could I have been more effective in the back end of the fight and not let it get close? The fact that you win potentially the first 6 rounds clean, And by the 11th, you're huffing and puffing and your eyes are puffy. You're giving up a lead a little bit. So my hope is that they put this rematch together and that Lomachenko is fully healthy and that he has a full training camp where he can, go all out. It would be very upsetting if ultimately, because I talked about this in the prediction, where a lot of Lopez's best chance are if Lomachenko is just not fully healthy. It turns out that was the case, right? And people say that's an excuse or whatever. I don't view that as an excuse. An injury is an injury. And if anybody who's been in athletics knows that you can get injured. And the counter argument is, well, everybody's injured going in. There's levels to that shit, man. Like, you pulled your hamstring in sparring a few weeks ago is not the same thing as a torn rotator cuff. It's just not the same thing. You ice for a couple of days, you stay low key, you're good to go. But you tear your rotator cuff, now you're faced with the decision of, do I have surgery right now? Do I get a cortisone shot? Do I take a week off? Like, what? So that's not the same thing. If somebody has to have an operation after the fight and then was training with an injury, that's a huge disadvantage. My opinion is that he should have pulled out. They should have set a new date. I think it's possible the fight wouldn't have happened if they needed to do that. If he, is injured and just resting for a period isn't going to fix it. But to me, it's a fight that would have been worth waiting until January or February, or maybe not that long if he had taken care of it when it happened. I'm guessing he got hurt sometime in September, potentially even August. So had he had the surgery, he would be better by this winter, and we could maybe get a fully healthy Lomachenko in this fight, come December, January. There's a part of me that wishes that happened, because then, there's always the asterisk of, well, I was injured. Well, that was your choice. And that was your call. I can see that it affected his performance. We all could see it. We could all see that man had his hands in his pockets for 6 rounds because he thought the kid would get mentally fatigued. And he was like, I got to save it for this back end. I got to just let the avalanche come on, and he's not going to be able to take it. Well, it turns out he could take it. And then come the 12th round, that he could come out stronger than Lomachenko. So there's a lot to be desired here, in my opinion. And that's why you got to do a fucking rematch. So that's my thoughts on the fight. Of course, it's another prediction that I fucking get wrong the minute they fucking read the scores. And I was like, 119, 109. Like, I know I'm wrong about this fight, but goddamn, I'm not that wrong. Because the truth is, there's elements of it that weren't that far off. Lomachenko always starts slow and comes on in the later end of the fight. It's just that instead of starting around 7, he should have started in 4 or 5.